Welcome to Mysteries Around America, the series where we dive into some of the darkest and most disturbing cases from the USA. So, without further ado, let's step into the darkness. Like many other families, 8-year-old Maddie Clifton lived happily with her parents on the south side of Jacksonville. Maddie had a lot of friends in the neighborhood, and her parents absolutely adored her. On November 3rd, 1998, Maddie left for school in the morning, and everything went well. She made her way home and returned at around 4:30 p.m, where she practiced playing the piano before heading outside to play with her friends. Her mother gave her a kiss goodbye and told her that she loved her. Maddie then made her way to where her friends were, just 3 houses down the street from where she lived. Maddie's mother, Sheila, called on her just past 6 p.m. to let her know that her dinner was ready and that she needed to come inside. To her surprise, her daughter didn't respond. This was unlike her, and so she started to search where she knew her daughter had been playing and around the neighborhood. But still, there were no signs of Maddie. After 10 minutes of searching, Sheila phoned the police, and a huge search of the area began, involving police officers and members of the local community. In the 7 days that followed her disappearance, no one had any idea as to where she could have gone. Pictures of Maddie had been plastered all over the area on posters, and her parents were interviewed for television broadcasts that were aired throughout the country. Police even requested the assistance of the National Guard and the FBI, but despite extensive searches of the sewers and similar areas, still nothing turned up. By the end of the 7 days, the FBI had offered a $100,000 reward for any information and officially took over the case. And soon enough, information came to light. On November 10th, Maddie's parents had been carrying out an interview close to their home. After it had officially wrapped, their neighbour across the street called for them and also for the assistance of a nearby police officer. The neighbour told the police officer that they had to check her 14-year-old son's bedroom because she had made a terrifying discovery. The officer rushed up to his room and began to search it, and when they looked under the bed frame, they found the lifeless body of Maddie Clifton.
Good afternoon, I'm Bruce Hamilton, live in the Lakewood section of Jacksonville, where just about 7.5 hours ago, a gruesome discovery was made. Little 8-year-old Maddie Clifton's body was found in a house that, ironically, is diagonally across from hers.
The neighbor's son, Joshua Phillips, was subsequently arrested after the discovery and taken into custody. This came as a complete shock to everyone who knew him, as he did not have a history of anything. He was described as polite and friendly, and he had even been friends with Maddie before taking her life. It was quickly determined that he should be tried as an adult, and when his case went to court, this is his version of events that detectives relayed. Josh was playing in the front yard of his home when Maddie approached him and asked if she could play too. Both of his parents were at work, so he decided to let her join in. They moved to the backyard and began playing baseball. At some point during this baseball session, Maddie got hit in the eye accidentally by the baseball, and she began to scream and cry. Josh claimed that he panicked and dragged her inside so he wouldn't get into trouble. But when he did this, all of the clothing that she was wearing on her bottom half came off. He claims that she was bleeding a lot from the damage that the baseball had done, and as a result of his panic, he hit her in the head. She continued to make loud noises after this, and so he slit her throat with a nearby knife. She was still alive at this point, but he knew he had to hide her from his father, who was on his way home. He ripped off the side panel of his bed frame and pushed her underneath the bed. When his father finally arrived, Josh was scared that he would be able to hear Maddie struggling to breathe. In a final effort to conceal what he had done, he pulled her out from under the bed and stabbed her in the lungs, before pushing her back under and leaving her there. He was charged with first-degree murder, and despite the version of events he gave, he pleaded not guilty, and the facts about the crime that we know for certain do not fall in line with his version of events. It is true that Josh was home alone, but Maddie's body and searches of his belongings revealed a different story. Just 30 minutes before Maddie had left her home, It was discovered that Josh had been watching violent pornography on his computer. During their baseball game, Josh claimed that Maddie had been hit by a baseball, and this resulted in a lot of blood. Despite this claim, no blood was found on any of Josh's baseballs, and there was no blood in any room in the house other than his bedroom or in the back garden. He also claimed that he dragged her inside, but there were no remnants of dirt or grass found on Maddie's body, which would have been the case, especially if he had dragged her to the point of some of her clothes coming off. He claims that they played baseball in the backyard, but investigators have said that this is unlikely, as their backyard wasn't big enough for them to play anything. There was also no damage in or near Maddie's eye that suggested she had been hit with a baseball. He also claimed to have stabbed her while she was still alive, but it was discovered that the wounds on her chest and abdomen had actually been inflicted after she had passed away. To round up the facts, Maddie experienced 3 different attacks at the hands of Josh. She had been hit with some sort of object in the forehead and the top of her head. Her throat had been slit, and she had been stabbed 9 times. She was curled in the fetal position when she was discovered, and one of her hands had been grabbing a piece of the bed frame, indicating that she was in fact still alive when she was stuffed onto the bed. Her shirt was pulled up, and she was wearing nothing from the waist down. Her bottom half clothes were discovered near her body, but there were no signs of sexual assault. The family of Maddie have also said that they believe Josh was responsible for strange things that occurred in the days following her disappearance. The family's phone went missing, and it had been used over the following days to make multiple paid calls to sex hotlines. One of their windows was found shattered, and Maddie's bedsheets had been stapled to her bed. Holes had been hammered in their walls, and a picture of Maddie's 11-year-old sister, Jessie, had vanished. Although it is not confirmed if he is responsible for the first 4 incidents, he definitely took the photograph, as it was discovered in his bedroom. He slept above Maddie's body for 7 days, and went to lengths to conceal the smell. He was interviewed by the police in his bedroom, and sniffer dogs even had a look around. He assisted with the investigation in any way he could, and even personally went to Jessie to check that she was alright. Unsurprisingly, it took the jury only 2 hours to find Josh guilty of first-degree murder, but there have been debates over if his sentence is right. He was sentenced to life without parole. However, it has been argued that it is unconstitutional to give a minor this extreme sentence. His sentence has been debated in court, and they found that potential for rehabilitation is possible. However, that at the same time, he did commit a calculated, sexually motivated, heinously violent act and went to great lengths to conceal it. Although a lesser sentence may have been considered, Maddie's mother asked that the sentence be upheld, and eventually it was. Although he is currently still serving life without parole, he is eligible for a resentencing sometime in 2023. It is argued that his crime was not premeditated, and he simply panicked while trying to sexually assault the girl. This seems to be his last line of defense, and it doesn't look as if any judge is going to fall for it. The sister of Maddie went on to purchase the home they lived in back then, and she still lives there to this day. Over the years, she has helped Josh's parents with everyday tasks, and they remain on good terms. It was the 29th of May. Police cars lined the streets, and police officers had arrived quickly to cordon off the horrific scene in the Kentucky neighborhood. Phones were ringing all across town, and it didn't take long for the news to spread that 2 of the kindest people around had been killed in their own apartment.
2 of the most loving and caring people God ever created were brutally and senselessly murdered.
Let me introduce you to Bill Stephenson and his wife Peggy. They were both 74 years old, and their 55th wedding anniversary was quickly approaching. They had been married since 1956, and they absolutely loved each other's company from the second they met. They both had large families, especially Bill, and the pair went on to have 3 children of their own. They lived a happy life, living in a condo in the city of Florence in an area that they felt safe in. The complex they lived in had only one entrance that also served as an exit. They had made no enemies in their neighborhood, and they were generally well liked by everyone they came in contact with. They were described as kind, good-hearted people who wished nothing but joy on everyone. It's important to mention that while they were kind to everyone they knew, they weren't stupid. They didn't hand over money like it was nothing, and they didn't give out their address to people who didn't need it. Very few people they knew had been inside their home, and the security was top-notch, so it wouldn't be easy for an intruder to gain access unless they were buzzed in by the couple. So now we know a little bit about our victims. Let's go back to the day of the crime. Peggy was an organist and avid attendee of her local church, so alarm bells were ringing when she failed to show up for a Memorial Day service. In addition to this, Bill was also absent from the truck shop that he ran, something that was also extremely unlike him. One of the couple's daughters, Beth, had attended the service that morning and asked her husband to go check on them at their condo, as she found this extremely weird. If they were gonna miss an event, they would usually contact people to let them know. Peggy had health issues that meant she sometimes had to cancel on people, but they had always notified others. They had never gone silent like they had done on this day. The husband arrived at the couple's condo at around 1 p.m. that day. He entered the building and made his way to the couple's place. Inside the apartment, he found a horrifying sight. Within seconds, he was on the phone with Beth, telling her that she had to come to her parents' condo, and quickly. By the time she arrived, the police had been called, and they had surrounded the complex. By this point, it was clear to her that something was extremely wrong. Investigators had found both Bill and Peggy inside of the condo, and both had been stabbed and bludgeoned until they had perished. They were found inside 2 separate rooms, and no weapons were found at the scene. Police were able to determine exactly what weapon was used in the crime. However, they have not revealed this information to the public, as they feel it's important to the investigation. The crime had occurred in the early hours of May 29th, that same day, but there were some strange things that the investigators had picked up on. After their lives had been taken, the victims had been taken into separate rooms and posed by the perpetrator. The killer had then taken items from around the home and placed them around the bodies, and the items that hadn't been placed near the victims had still been moved from their original locations. Investigators have gone on record to state that they believe every single item in the home had been altered in some way in every room of the condo. In addition to revealing this information, they also revealed that the killer had messed around with photographs in the home, and the police believe they did so to suggest that whoever committed the crime liked certain people and disliked others. Some sources also report that the killer apparently left a written message inside the home. However, the police haven't revealed what it had said. This crime left a lot of questions, with one of the main ones being, what was the motive behind this? It seems as if the perpetrator knew that this was going to be asked, and they had taken steps to mess with investigators, possibly in an attempt to throw them off the trail. The way they had messed with the items in the condo pointed towards a personal motive. It seems unlikely that the killer would go out of their way to pose the bodies of the victims if it were just a random act of violence or a robbery gone wrong, or at least that's what investigators believed. Robbery was also a possibility, though due to the state of the apartment, they could have been searching for something, and that was why they had moved every item. This motive was basically ruled out when they checked the items and realized that all of the couple's valuables had been left behind. So unless a criminal had decided to break in and the lives of the couple and take meaningless items that sell for next to nothing, then we can rule this one out. A ritualistic crime was also considered, but this was quickly ruled out by professionals who analyzed the crime scene and saw no correlation to any known rituals. An autopsy would be carried out on both victims, and it would reveal some confusing and terrifying information. One of the victims had some sort of medical device implanted in their body, which revealed that they had perished between 1 and 4 a.m. that morning. One of the victims had suffered an injury at least 2 hours after they had passed away, meaning that whoever had ended the couple likely remained in their apartment until past 6 a.m. Investigators believe that they may have even left the apartment and returned at some point in the morning to continue tampering with the crime scene. These aren't the only terrifying facts that investigators believe to be true though. A detective working on the case stated that he believes whoever was in the apartment that night intended to slay both Peggy and Bill, and this wasn't a case of leaving no witnesses. The detective also made sure to make it clear that the perpetrator moved around the condo with ease and seemed to be familiar with the property, meaning that they may have been known to the couple. Further suggesting this is the fact that the crime occurred in the early hours of a Sunday, a day where people around them knew that they had church in the morning. If the criminal was known to the couple, then that would mean that the killer likely knew exactly how much they would have to stage the scene before having to flee, and roughly when the couple's bodies would be discovered by a concerned citizen related to the church. The detective also suggested that the motive was in some way religious. This suggestion has led some to believe that the specific objects placed around the bodies were related to Christianity. With all of this in mind, you must be thinking, surely someone has made suspect number 1 for this crime. But the answer is no. There are many suspects, and there has even been DNA found at the scene, but the true killer remains a mystery. The DNA found at the scene has not turned up any results, and it's unable to be used to create a physical description of the killer. Tons of interviews have been carried out in relation to the case all around America. However, no one has been convicted. There are 2 suspects though that police considered at some point down the line. The first of these being the nephew of the couple, Charles Stephenson. Charles was convicted for bludgeoning a 67-year-old 17-year-old in her own home in 2012, and he was sentenced to life in prison for the crime. This led a lot of people to believe that he was obviously guilty for taking the lives of Bill and Peggy too. However, the DNA found at the scene, which may or may not be connected in the first place, didn't match his, and police don't consider him a suspect. In the opinion of the public though, it seems as though he's the killer in most people's eyes. The second suspect, as mentioned by the detective I spoke about previously, was a man named Samuel Little, a serial killer responsible for taking 93 lives, although some people believe that number is 95, as some facts point towards his involvement in this case. He was arrested in April 2011 for unrelated crimes, but was released just 5 days later after he was locked up. He hitchhiked and made his way on foot multiple cities and states, and investigators have managed to draw up a timeline of where he likely was on specific dates. And around May 29th, he just happened to be traveling through the area where Bill and Peggy lived. The crime was not like all of the other ones he had committed though, and he had only ever slain females before, so the fact that he was in the area seems to be nothing more than a coincidence.
The final suspect does not have a name, but they do have a possible associate: Richard Allen, the man responsible for taking the lives of Abby Williams and Libby German in 2017. We've all seen the infamous Snapchat video of their killer before he was identified, and thanks to his arrest, police have started to reveal more details about what happened to the girls. Their killing had been brutal, and their bodies had been posed, and police have reason to believe that Richard may not have acted alone, but rather with a group of body posers. And that's why this comes up now, because police investigating the case received a series of tips this year pointing them towards Delphi, where the girls were slain. The main tip did not claim that Richard was involved, but rather listed reasons why the people who killed the girls may have also killed the couple. To top it off, they even gave a name, the name of a specific person who had a specific item. Police quickly got in contact with the person named in the tip, but they do not consider them a suspect at this time, but they have said that the named individual is cooperating with the investigation. So what we're left with is 2 suspects, a big lead, 2 victims, and a horrific crime scene. There are so many ways that this could have gone, and we'll never know for sure. With the police rightly holding a lot of information close to their chest, we'll have to wait until they're ready to reveal more before we can figure out the truth. The case is still being actively investigated, and the couple's daughter hopes that the monster who committed this crime will soon be brought to justice.
Hey guys, it's me, Tuv. I just want to let you guys know that my rock album is going to be out August 18th. I don't know when this video is going to drop, but August 18th, that's when my rock album is going to come out. So make sure to go watch the album premiere or the full album movie on my main channel, and make sure to go stream it on Spotify and Apple Music.
Thank you to my Patreon supporters for your continued support. If you enjoyed this video, remember to turn on my channel notifications so you never miss an upload. Until next time, sleep tight.